Our system of governance maintains its authority through what is known as jus gladii. This literally translates to the right of the sword. And this political theory is simple. Why bother with petty nuisances like rational debate when you can simply apply intimidation and coercion? Those that govern without intellectual nuance do so by force alone. And doing so is absolutely necessary when your foundational doctrines are full of logical inconsistencies. In other words, their constitutions are guarded by a sword. But fortunately for us, the blade of jus gladii seems to be rather broken. Any authority that cannot withstand rigid questioning simply must defend itself through violence and intimidation. And this can be seen quite vividly in the iconography of the modern justice system. You will often find that symbolism betrays intent in a way that plain language does not. It is unfortunate, but we live in a world where the spoken word ultimately means very little, at least when coming from the mouths of our petty authorities. And this is because they have been taught to communicate their true intentions to both each other and the general public through visual metaphor instead of plain language. And the place that they have learned to do this is, of course, the fraternal order. This is the true business of those Masonic lodges that probably inhabit your town. These institutions exist to teach a system of symbolic reasoning to those deemed worthy enough to learn it. And this is done in secrecy and silence for reasons that should soon become self evident. This is Lady Justice, an icon well known throughout the whole of the Western world. And yet her truth remains unspoken to those not initiated into the domain of the iconographic elite. At first glance, we can see that she definitely invokes the right of the sword. But another defining feature stands out as well, and that is the binding upon her eyes. Artificial blindness is not an apt metaphor for impartiality. It simply isn't possible to accurately weigh something while simultaneously wearing a blindfold. To rule is to measure, and one that has been robbed of their sight cannot reasonably be expected to do so, at least not with any degree of fairness or accuracy. Furthermore, the scales that justice holds are often depicted as being blatantly imbalanced. This might be the only honesty that you're likely to see within the modern legal trade. Ultimately, Lady Justice is only an avatar for the system as a whole, and those that professionally represent her are not nearly so blind. You see, those that occupy judicial positions have been shown hidden light. And yes, it is all of them. Every last one. This is the frontispiece to an old legal text, and it shall provide for us a clear idea of these authorities' true sense of justice. At least as clear as one can get when communicating exclusively in obscurities. As we can see, everything we've already covered has been depicted here. But there are a few added details that make the situation more defined. To the left, we can see an offering being made of cereal and fruit. When researching the Common Gavel, one notices that sheaths of grain are a routine reoccurrence in photos thereof. This appears in image after image, and if the symbolism here isn't already clear, this next photo should provide some illumination as to its true meaning. Returning to the emblem, at the feet of this figure, we see lamb and censer. This represents the art of casting a haze in front of the innocent. And yes, that is haze, as in fraternal hazing. Those initiated into the mysteries are reborn inside of a fog of both psychological and mythological uncertainty. In other words, it is far easier to control people when they have no idea what the fuck is actually going on. And just like Lady Justice, those that join fraternal orders are brought forth to their altar while wearing a blindfold. This is called a hoodwink, and it is an important element of initiatory rituals. Yes, they actually fucking do this.
On your head, in token of your sincerity, kiss the Holy Bible on which you are obligated.
So, what is the ultimate point here? Well, to quote from their own literature, why were you hoodwinked? As I was in darkness at that time, it was to remind me that I should keep the whole world so respecting Masonry. This means that in addition to helping disorientate the person wearing it, the hoodwink also serves as a reminder that Masonic affairs should be conducted in secret. And any organization that has a membership that is reluctant to even admit its existence simply must have something legitimate to hide. This is highly concerning because this cult is only obscure in its intentions, not in its ranks. Its membership is numerous, and they inhabit basically all professions, including high office, especially high office. The blindness from this haze that we speak of is ultimately representative of the way that our authorities abuse language in order to mask their true intentions. And one of the few sympathies that I can offer them is that they do this to each other as well as the general public. When it comes to the right of the sword, you will find that the blades obscure the doctrine. Behold how this magistrate is standing in front of the text of the tradition as if to obstruct it. The books that he is posing with are exclusively for the understanding of a select few, and those chosen to interpret them are what Freemasonry calls the Ostiarius. This term is borrowed from ancient Latin and literally translates to doorman or gatekeeper. With all of this in mind, it can accurately be said that obfuscation and exclusivity are the most important weapons of the status quo. These could be seen as the dual blades that weigh down upon their central text. And one would do well to remember that the church itself is the ultimate censor. And the courts have been a temple in their own right since before the days of Christ. My local courthouse even has stained glass windows. With all of the secrecy in mind, what business does this temple truly conduct? Well, in case you didn't notice, earlier on that altar, we saw a lamb. You see, chaffs of wheat are not the true subject of the harvest at hand. That honor belongs to the Lamb of the Gospel. The iconography given to the common mass does indeed suggest a gentle shepherd. Unfortunately, such imagery can be likened to opium poppies that have been sown within the fields of reaping, as those that perpetuate it have been given a quite different education indeed when it comes to this matter. But as luck would have it, the allegories and icons of these petty initiates can actually be used against them. In fact, sometimes it seems as if they have been designed for exactly this purpose. Contrary to the idea of the benevolent herdsman, the symbolism that is taught to the Masonic establishment seems to suggest that the lamb is actually to be roped and sheared when the opportunity arises. I suppose this shouldn't be too surprising, as sheep are, after all, farm animals. So it would be best to be cautious of any religion that likes to compare you as such, as you can find iconographic depictions of this concept going back much farther than the material that is presented to modern Freemasons. In case you are wondering, these images are sourced from a form of literature known as emblem books and illuminated manuscripts. This sort of material is mostly forgotten to modernity, but it was never popular with the general population to begin with. These works utilize poetic metaphor and an art style known as emblemata in order to convey philosophical abstractions about humanity and the divine. And I have found that material like this tends to be a highly credible source despite forgoing descriptive language in its traditional sense. For example, sometimes the shoe that is depressed upon the poor lamb is depicted as a gentle slipper, This is as if to show that these shepherds are, after all, men of Christ, and as such, their oppressions are merciful and lenient. In true Masonic fashion, this remains unwritten in their scriptures, but as you can see, it is depicted quite vividly in their iconography. And this is what truly matters when one is dealing with a system of symbols. There is a marked difference between what you are told and what you are shown. This seems to act as a sort of filter within the cult of Freemasonry that serves to differentiate between those that can truly comprehend the material and those that cannot. In any case, one must never underestimate the power of leaving their profanities completely unworded, as they become difficult to recognize if they aren't spoken into being. And this is exactly what we are trying to do here. Tyranny and corruption can be made visible through language. The refusal of the authorities to acknowledge the true nature of their power structure is what is known as wearing the mask of Cylon. This is exactly what it sounds like. And this is a concept borrowed by the cult of Freemasonry from the cult of Greece. And yes, this is a cult in the most literal sense of the word. If the veil upon the eyes of Lady Justice were to slip, she would be able to behold an establishment of authorities that have dedicated themselves to secret oaths and strange rites practiced in shadow.
O Lord my God, O Lord my God, O Lord my God, is there no help for the widow's son?
That's a fucking cult right there. It's just a cult. That's all there is to it. The next time you see one of your local authority figures dressed in the finery of their official capacity, I want you to imagine them bare chested and blindfolded with a noose around their neck as they take a pledge of secrecy upon bended knee in front of the Christian Bible, because it is almost certain that they had to do just that in order to obtain their stature.